Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SimplyPodLogical, a simply neological podcast.
Hello.
Hello. Menchie, do you have anything to add? I think you can hear her purring
Get
there.
those cat purrs.
Menchie's our emotional support animal these days.
She's also our mascot, university mascot.
She's our, the simply neological university mascot. Not a bird, not a raven, not a GG.
No, just a cat.
These are all Ottawa inside jokes. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are aware we haven't been online the last while because sadly Christine's dad passed away. She has talked about that as much as I think she wants to in other places. Mm-hmm. I think what would be best for us, best for you, is if we could
do fun things.
Continue to use these different channels and platforms as a creative outlet, a bit of a distraction, and to talk about some other stuff going on in our lives as you deal with that matter privately.
Yeah, and just for the podcast audience, we enjoy doing these podcasts. I've actually missed doing them, and there's been a lot of things we were planning on doing that we didn't really do. So I kind of want to pick up on some of the things that we probably would have done earlier than we're doing today. But one of those things is an education-related podcast because I had recently announced something that we'd been working almost a year on.
I think over a year.
Preparing and making sure everything was formalized and yada, yada, which is that I have my own scholarship under my name at Carleton University, which is where I went to school for my bachelor's and my master's.
Yeah, so there is, if you are currently a student at Carleton University in any undergraduate program, applications are open until November 15th.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the Cristine Rotenberg Scholarship for Academic and Creative Pursuits.
Yeah.
Or Creative and Academic Pursuits. Maybe I mixed up the order. I don't know.
We thought about calling it Simply or Neological or something, but then, I don't know. It just felt weird because what if that doesn't exist forever, but Cristine Rotenberg it will exist forever. Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
Sure.
It's kind of I don't know what to call it, but yeah, this is what we decided.
I thought you should call it Get You a Girl Who Can Do Both podcast.
Well, it's not just
I don't want to limit it just to... Okay.
Exactly.
But anyway, it's a scholarship.
A real scholarship, not a tuition giveaway that I did on YouTube.
Yeah, and people will know. We'll talk about the history of you having given away tuition in a more informal basis. But for a while now, we have been looking into how to do this in a more formal way. So just to sort of wrap, if you are a Carleton student, you can apply to it now. We'll leave a link down below. And the purpose of the scholarship is there's an application, and basically it wants to reward people who show a commitment both to their studies, but also have a sort of creative or artistic interest that is distinct from what they're going to school for. Mm-hmm. And, because we find that really inspiring when we see people who do that. And we think you have inspired a lot of people by sort of
and I also think
that.
I realize the difficulty in continuing your passions or whatever your creative interests are outside of school, because school takes a lot of time, takes money to attend school. So just thinking back to my history when I was doing my master's, when I started nail art, it would be easier for people to potentially continue doing whatever it is they're creatively interested in if they had a scholarship like this that was designed for people like this who are serious about their school, but then also have this thing completely independent of school that they like to creatively explore, that takes time. And sometimes it takes money to fund your creative passions. Mm-hmm. So
we're very excited to see... the interesting thing about doing a scholarship formally like this through university is we actually don't know who is applying for it and who will win it. We are not in a position to pick the winners because that would be a conflict.
Maybe we should explain. Well, first let's explain what the scholarship is, or who gets it.
I think we just...
Well, no, but there's two recipients every year.
Yes.
For the rest of time. Right? There is actually a complicated explanation for how scholarships work. Ben, do you want to explain it?
Yeah, okay. We could talk about how...
What does this actually... What did I donate? What does this mean?
So you Okay. Like over a year ago, we were looking into how to do the scholarship in a more formal way because what you've done the last 3 years or so, 4 years, was just sort of through your YouTube channel, you have given people cash that is the equivalent of their tuition as part of this.
Well, I had asked them for their like proof of enrollment and the invoice, so it's not like I was just
Yes, but we are technically not administering. We were not administering a scholarship
correct.
technically.
Yes.
We were just giving people a cash prize equivalent to that. There were some like accounting things to consider there, Anyway, we realized that wasn't really a tenable situation moving forward, and you had expressed an interest in wanting to do something that is a little more permanent, right? So for a while, we had been talking to some nonprofit organizations with the idea of making a scholarship that would be open to people across Canada at different institutions. But the problem we ran into there, and why that ultimately didn't work, is that those organizations... they need to be paid to run a scholarship, and they want to take a fee per the number of people applying to the scholarship. And as helpful and as amazing as some of those groups are, it just wasn't realistic for us, knowing how many people had applied for the scholarships that you had run in the past. We couldn't be paying these administrative fees for the number of applications because we would have been paying more in fees for the people to run the scholarship than we would have actually even been giving away to students.
Yeah,
likely.
So that was not in the best interest of students ultimately. And it's really because if we were to launch this, we know that there would be a high number of applicants just because of my social media presence. But if like some random like big corporate company has a scholarship, like they don't have as many applicants because there isn't that like social awareness that people are like, oh, I'm really inspired by this public figure, so I'm going to apply.
Yeah,
so
so you
that's
see,
why
like-
it works for big corporations potentially,
Exactly.
but it did not work for us. And I know how many people, or I can guess how many people would apply, because if I look back to my annual informal tuition giveaways, one year there was more than 10,000 people who applied. And I understand the burden of looking through that. I'm not like, I understand why this organization was going to charge per application. But if they charge a certain fee and there's 10,000 applications, that is more money to just look through applications than it is left to give to students.
Yes. So we ultimately came to the conclusion that we had to work with a specific institution, our post-secondary institution, and it made sense for that to be where you got your
Carleton,
education,
yeah.
at Carleton here in Ottawa. So we started talking to them months and months ago. This happened back in November, December of last year is when we actually
A year ago.
figured this out. Yeah, it's been about a year. So what you do is it's called an endowed fund. Basically, if you give a bunch of money to a university, like a large amount, what they do is they take that money and add it to their portfolio. They take that money, they invest it, and then as the scholarship, they give out every year like 4% or whatever the rate is at that time, which is basically just what amount of money you can make on a big pile of money that you have invested in some sort of endowment fund or something.
So there's like strategic investment that goes into administering scholarships too, because it's not like I will pay $3,000 times 2 every year to a student. We gave the university up front $100,000,
Yeah.
which they, through some initiative, did like a matching thing. They matched 50 grand.
They matched half of it, yeah.
So there was in total $150,000 that went into my scholarship fund. They will take, at least for the first year, it's 2 times $3,000 awards for 2 different students for a total of $6,000, and do that every year
Yeah.
for the rest of time. However, that the amount administered could grow over time as more money and interest occurs, or we could choose to change to make it 3 recipients instead of 2, or we can add more money to the fund
Exactly.
in the future.
There's a lot of flexibility to sort of change it, but I think the whole point was you wanted this to be something that wasn't just dependent on you having cash to give out to people one year.
Yeah.
The whole point is this is permanent.
This
so
makes it permanent.
they're able to give out this prize while maintaining the the sort of principal balance so it can always exist as long as the university exists.
So even though they're only giving out 6,000 this year, they invest the other 94, oh no, more than that, plus $50,000. So that just gets invested and it just accrues interest, which are like
exactly,
which is good. So
so that's in a
that's
nutshell
how that works. It's a little more
happened.
complicated than my usual annual things. I guess the process actually is more complicated too for selecting a winner, but we're actually removed from it on account of impartiality and transparency.
Yes.
We can't be choosing the winners when you work with a major institution like this, because hypothetically, what if we just like chose our friends, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want to avoid. So I understand that.
Yeah, and it's part of the reason to move away from the informal way we were doing it before, because even though we knew we were doing things in an ethical way, it just this really gives it legitimacy in a way, and it really will be something that survives long after people are watching your stuff online. This will still exist.
Yeah, so it will ultimately be like a committee of people who work at the university who do this all the time, or for other awards too. Like, I'm not the only scholarship at my university.
Yeah, and there was an option of limiting it to like a specific program at the university or something like that, but ultimately I didn't make that decision,
because
right?
it's not about the particular program of interest. Like, I did criminology and sociology, but I didn't want to limit it to people for that reason. I just said anyone in undergrad, and their rules is that you have to be a full-time undergrad student in order to apply for any of these scholarships. But yeah, that we kind of have to follow along with partly what Carleton's rules are for administering and applying for scholarships, but they let us guide a lot of the application questions because it's about the spirit of the award and doing something creative outside of your academic interests, which is like new and different. And I'm really excited that the university was like open to this idea, because I don't think there's ever been an award quite like worded this way.
Yeah, it's a little unusual. The application's pretty simple for any Carleton students that might be applying to it. It's open another week, like we said. It's just basically asking people, like, what is a creative interest you have that is distinct from or independent of your studies.
And this doesn't mean you have to have a lot of followers on social media.
No.
I just want to make that extremely clear.
Good point. We were really cautious and really tried to make sure they understood. We wanted to communicate to the people who will be picking the winner that this wasn't a competition to be like, who has a big social media following and is committed to school. It's not about that at all. I think it is likely that the winners will leverage the internet or social media to share their art potentially, but maybe not, right? Maybe they just do it locally.
Maybe they do it. Yeah, it's not a requirement to even have a social media following or presence. No. But just we know with this day and age with students often like to use social media to share their art.
Yeah, so I guess we're just really curious to see.
So we're going to find out the winners, I think, like after it's all done.
Yeah, so applications close in mid-November. I think winners will be notified pretty shortly after that. And then there's some sort of awards event in January, I want to say, where I think we'll probably have an opportunity to talk to the recipients, but I don't think there's any obligation.
I think
they don't
if
have
the
to.
recipients agree, then we could potentially speak with them, but like they don't have to.
Yeah,
which is fair. Yeah.
We'll see, right? But yeah, no, it's all really exciting. But yeah, again, just really curious. Is it like someone studying law but they paint their nails, or someone
that was like
who's in math but they
you needed to pick a totally different
example. Performance artist. Like I don't know. I guess we'll see. I'm just really curious to see.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited about it, and we've thought about this for a really long time to do something more permanent. And it's funny thinking back to why I started tuition giveaways in the first place. Part of me thinks like it was kind of a joke why I started, although I don't want to say that because that's completely discrediting myself. But like I remember 5 years ago now when big YouTubers were doing MacBook giveaways. Yeah. And that was like the thing. Subscribe to my channel and you could win a MacBook. All of a sudden, this channel grows like 1 million subscribers from that. And I remember just thinking like, you know, what if I turn that on its head and do a tuition giveaway? Let's do that. That's fun. Now, I knew I couldn't like pay American tuition for a number of like tax and just complicated reasons. So it was always only limited to just Canadian students or people within Canada, going to school in Canada, rather. So that's why I started it. And I was also just fresh out of school. I had recently finished, and I always talked about how much I love school. I support people who want to further their education, and I think it's an important thing if that's what's right for you. So I've always kind of hated the idea of big influencers completely discouraging school just because like that sounds like the cool thing to say. The cool thing to say is like, fuck school, I'm a millionaire, I didn't need it. Okay, well, that's you. But like, what if there's someone out there who has a particular job aspiration where they need that education? And I just really didn't like the whole discouraging it because that's like cool. So I was trying to counter that by doing tuition giveaways, but giveaways in the style of people doing giveaways on YouTube, which is always like life hacks, clickbait, school pranks or something was the video concept. And then I'd like announce that I'm giving away tuition. So that's how it started 5 years ago. And I guess I've matured. I have matured. My audience has matured.
Yes.
Too. And now my way of giving back to students has matured in a way because it's a more formal process that can last forever.
Yeah. Look at us, all growing up. Too old for the internet at this point, maybe. No,
I don't think. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No. I was just gonna say, yeah. Like looking back to those first videos, it was very reactive to what we sensed other YouTubers were doing, which was sort of discounting the importance of education.
Jake Paul's music video sticks out to me. My teacher never taught me how to, or whatever.
Yeah, and like he's an easy target to get mad at. But for me, it was more like there were some female content creators like making like school hack videos that were about like how to make your notebooks pretty, and some of them even included like how to cheat at school and like it was like we're talking like Nikki and Gabby and people like that, and like I get they're kind of young and dumb maybe,
and they might have changed since then, so I don't feel like dragging them now makes any sense.
But it was pretty prolific at the time to see content like that, and I think we had like in one of those videos where you'd done it, we'd even Googled like school hacks. What are the top results when you like look at like what YouTubers are teaching young people about school?
A lot of them were
cheating.
cheating.
It was those videos. It was videos like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were very reactive. I know we've both gotten some criticism over the years of being like too pro school.
Well, people interpreted it as you must go to university in order to be smart like me. That's what people decided to interpret my pro-education stance, which I feel like is just really unfortunate that that's what some people took away from it, because really I was just trying to offer a counter to what I felt was incredibly damaging. I don't think it's a good influence on people to make music videos about teachers are useless and you should throw things at them, or here's how to cheat in school. And, you know, me just saying like school can be cool, I don't think should be interpreted as saying that if you don't do that you're in the wrong. I think I've always kind of expressed, although maybe I haven't had as long as a period of time like the podcast, for example, which is a more recent thing, but my heart has always been like, if that's what you want to do, don't listen to these people discouraging you and telling you that school isn't cool.
And it's kind of hard to have a nuanced conversation about this in some ways, because there are a lot of really young, successful people that found that success not through the more sort of traditional route of getting higher education. And we're not in the US context where we're getting a university education
Costs
is
like $100,000.
stupidly overpriced and people go into crippling debt, student loans that are predatory, having to pay them back. So I think we were a little sort of ignorant of that sort of side of the conversation.
Well, that's honestly how I learned a lot more about it.
Yeah.
The cost of U.S. tuition. It was during that era 4 or 5 years ago where I was like researching it and learning about it. Yeah. Because why would I think about that previously too?
Yeah, and I get it. And we're absolutely not saying that everyone should go to
No,
university.
I've never said that.
I mean, I like the idea of a society where everyone has the
Opportunity if they
to
wish.
go if they want to.
But it's always about matching what kind of outcomes you want in life. If you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, I'm just picking the most obvious, like whatever jobs. But like you want to work in the criminal justice system in some capacity, you should look at what degrees, if any, or maybe it's a college degree, is required for those particular positions. That's always been my advice. I've even like retweeted StatCan information and research papers on like what particular degrees lead to what outcomes and what financial outcomes, because that's what people are often interested in.
Yeah, if you're looking at it completely pragmatically like that, there's a shortage of skilled tradespeople in some industries where if you're purely only motivated by money, it might actually be in your interest to consider
trades in college,
less specialized things like that. But I do also sort of have this view of, I like the idea of people going to university to get higher education because I think it just it gives you skills that can apply to every aspect of your life. And
or
I think
college. Just
sure.
Sorry, we use the word university because that's
for
more
everything.
common in Canada, but there's also college in Canada.
Yeah.
But college is often like more skills and trades programs. Not always. There's like arts colleges.
But just like even the sort of skills you learn from doing any
Like
sort of
writing
like
a paper.
arts undergrad degree of learning how to make an argument well or communicate ideas. I think most people would be better off with at least some level of that if they're not getting it from mandatory levels of schooling below that, like high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Like
sure.
this came up in, so let's talk about, you made a video with a former professor.
Yeah. Simplyproflogical.
Simplyproflogical.
Shout out.
A criminology professor at Carleton. She's great, by the way. We hadn't seen her in quite a
I know.
while.
It had been, since I defended my thesis, which was in 2014.
So selfishly, that was just like a really
Yeah.
nice opportunity to reconnect with someone we were both kind of close with, even though we didn't.
Yeah, we
didn't know
same,
each other.
We were never in the same class with her. We were in another class together. That's how we met.
Yeah, and
But-
she mentioned in the video I was in her first
Her first,
ever
yeah.
class she taught at Carleton
Okay.
as a prof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I was in her second year. I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, quantitative research method. Anyway, she's great. And anyway, I can't remember why I thought of that. I think she had
video.
brought up this idea of whether it's like learning for learning's sake or being pragmatic. And I was a little surprised that she I'm not, it's the right answer. She said it's like totally reasonable to be pragmatic about your education and looking at it as something you want to get something out of at the end of the day and
Yeah.
not having to have this romantic view of learning for learning's sake either.
I mean, if you can afford to and you enjoy it, then you can learn for learning's sake.
yeah.
That's up to you. But if you're more practical, which has always been kind of my take, which is why I chose a certain program and why I continued on with the master's degree, because I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I would get scholarships and knew that it would be worth it for me in the career that I specifically wanted and knew that that's where I was going. Then what was I saying? Sorry, I did take a pragmatic approach to
Yeah.
education. I know my life has changed a lot since I graduated, so you could argue that I didn't need it. But whatever. Like to me, in the career I have as like a crime stats analyst, all those steps of education that I went through got me that job essentially, and it put me in a better position to do that.
And
But
I
that's
think,
because it's what I wanted. I'm not saying other people need to go do. I feel like I have to disclaim it every time.
I don't think you do. But I think you made a really good point in that video with her too about how even though you wouldn't think like your schooling has lent itself to like your success online, I think you did a good job of articulating how just again those sort of skills of time management, how to make an
management.
argument, how to
Yeah.
communicate ideas in writing, how to plan things. Like I think a lot of the skills that you learned in university also lent themselves to you creating a successful media business.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to explain, and I don't have like a cheat sheet for that, but that is a common question I get all the time, especially like in the podcast suggestions thread on Discord, is people ask us
Time
to do,
management.
how do you manage your time, Christine? You do 800 things. How do you do it? I want to know how to do it. I don't have like here's step one. And if I did, I'd probably be like scamming you, because a lot of people who do that and they say like, here's exactly how to be like me, like they're lying.
Sign up for my
That's not
course.
Sign up for my life class, $500 an hour. No,
Yeah.
no. But like the truth is, I think a lot of the reason why I am how I am and why I manage multiple things at once is because I started behaving that way and acting in that way in university. Mm-hmm. So before university, I was also like a determined person, and I think
some of that is just sort of inherent.
Some
to
of
your
that
personality.
is inherent, but it was university that really taught me how to balance multiple different things, multiple different classes. I had an exam for this subject tomorrow, but I had a paper due in 2 weeks, and it was worth way more. How do you decide what to give attention to and weigh? And you kind of had to figure most of that out on your own in university. No one's teaching you. No one's holding your hand. So it was a lot of like trial, error, strategy. Write this down, use my agenda, and figure out how am I going to make this work. Always start your papers early. Do your lit review weeks before, okay? Don't leave things to the last minute. And that is probably like one piece of practical advice that I know everyone has heard. So no one's like, oh, wow, great advice. But like, that is so true. You know, do the fun part last. What's the most fun part of writing a paper? For me, it was finishing the references. There was something so satisfying about cleaning up my references because I knew I was done. And I'm just cleaning it up. It's got to be APA or whatever type of citation. So I do all the hard stuff first and save the cleaning of the references for last.
So you could have the satisfaction of cleaning up the references.
And like checking like the page numbers or the table of contents matching. Do all of the fun, whatever the fun stuff is for you, do it last.
Yeah. So as part of the scholarship announcement, we were supposed to do something with Carleton.
Yeah.
A more sort of formal announcement video, but ultimately there was a lot of COVID restrictions, and like the policies were changing all the time leading up to this in a way where it's just made it kind of impossible to plan for something. Like we were supposed to align with some people at the university, even the president of the anyway, there were some things that were supposed to happen as like a more formal announcement that ultimately didn't happen. Instead, we just wandered onto campus one day and got some footage that way. And I guess, do you want to reflect on, I noticed you seemed very happy to be back there.
I was like,
I thought it was kind of adorable. What was it like for you to be back on campus?
Yeah, I miss that place. I don't know if it's just because it brings back like good memories of feeling like I'm an independent, accomplished person, and I'm just happy to have done all of it by myself. It just like the work part, I mean, because no one's holding your hand while you're trying to finish class. But it could also just be the environment. Like the Carleton University campus feels very much like a campus. Like there's a quad where there's buildings all around, and there's nice trees in the middle, and there's a beautiful ravine. Like it is a beautiful campus as far as like I'm concerned, like in comparison to some other like downtown style campuses that are kind of spread out along a city. Carleton is much more like insular, and it feels like a cozy space. I mean, there's giant buildings and a long space to walk if you were to walk across campus. But
people in Ottawa will understand what you're getting at, because there's two major universities in Ottawa, University of Ottawa and Carleton University. And Ottawa, Ottawa, whatever. Anyway, it's like right downtown. And it doesn't feel like a campus in the more traditional way.
I'm not going to, like, some people like that. They like to be downtown, so it's really convenient. My sister went to Ottawa U. I took a class during my master's at Ottawa U. Like, you could take credits at one of the other university, and they still count. Just for me, I grew up, like I lived at Carleton in the residences, and they have tunnels everywhere. People might be interested in this because Canada is so cold, right? That's the joke. It's so cold. At Carleton University, there were tunnels. So you literally didn't have to go outside. There was a period where I didn't go outside for like 2 weeks. It's bad for you.
2 weeks, 2 months.
2 months during the winter, yeah. But like I would get up in my residence. I'd go down the elevator. I'd go through the tunnels to the cafeteria, come back to my residence, get ready for class, and then go through the tunnels to the entire campus. You could get to every single building through the tunnels.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
it's convenient, but also kind of depressing if you never go outside.
I loved it. I know what you mean. Like sometimes you gotta go outside to get sunlight and whatever. But
Anyway, sorry, I
loved it.
wasn't bringing up the comparison of Ottawa because, like, I know there's like a bit of a rivalry between the schools.
I don't play sports, so I don't
give a
care.
shit. I feel like 90% of people don't care, but
Yeah.
it just is like sort of a fun thing for some people to engage in. But I was just trying to emphasize your point that Carleton feels more like a campus with like green space and open spaces.
And places to sit outside the library, places to get a Starbucks and just relax with friends. And I used to do that all the time and often by myself. Like I would just go get a Starbucks and sit in a library or in one of the random buildings where there was just like stools, and I would take notes after class. Or I would attend classes that I wasn't even registered in because I was part of the volunteer program where you could be a peer note taker for other students. Yeah. So when I was in my 4th year, I think I started doing that. And I just liked doing it.
You would do that for classes you weren't even in.
Correct.
Oh, I thought that was only for like you take notes of classes
No,
you're enrolled in
you
for
can
other
do both.
people.
So you
Okay.
can do it if there happens to be a student who needs a peer note taker in a class that you're attending, you can do it, but you can also attend extra classes. I did that, but I chose like sociology classes because it has to be something that you kind of understand, or else what are you taking notes on? Like, sorry, yeah, just to be
Signing
clear,
up for
no,
like
no.
some 4th year physics
No.
honors class.
Notes would be a mess. Be covered in holo. No. But I took. I attended extra sociology classes that I was not actually taking to be a note taker. So I didn't have to take the exams or like do anything on them, but I would just like type there or take handwritten notes sometimes because laptops weren't as normal.
Actually, that's interesting. Yeah, I remember towards the end of my undergrad getting a MacBook and being one of the few people in the class, I think, with a MacBook.
And were you always on Facebook? Because everyone who had a laptop in class was on Facebook.
So I had a MAME emulator on my computer, and I'd just be playing Donkey Kong.
Oh, shush.
Not recommended. But anyway, I bet you walk into an undergrad class now, I bet you could count on one hand the people in there not on a computer.
Yeah, no, it is kind of crazy. I do agree that laptops now would seem incredibly essential because you can write faster. You can type faster than you can write. I just remember I would take handwritten notes. I'd had different binders for different classes, and then I'd go home and type them all up because typing up my notes also helped me to remember and register what the prof had said. So I could type up and like highlight, oh yeah, that was important.
Really? I kind of felt like writing things out by hand made me...
But if you're writing them out when they're being delivered to you, you're not necessarily registering what's important because you're just trying to get it all, right? But if
Yeah.
you go back and revise, so that there's this turned into a hot tip from Cristine. But like if you are in class and you're typing on your laptop, because that's just how the more efficient way to do it, maybe the secret is when you go home, or maybe if you are still home, but like on a separate occasion, read over your notes, highlight the things that you remember were emphasized or important, and maybe even write a summary of those notes because you want to try and reinforce the key points. If you just type everything the prof says and you're not actually paying attention, you're just focusing on writing the words. You're not retaining much.
Yeah, there's a difference between recording and actually
Executive
interpreting,
summary. You need to write an executive summary. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Anyways, I really liked going to Carleton, and I don't know what that means. Maybe I just wish I was like young again.
I mean, you don't have to be young to go to university.
I know. You're correct. I didn't mean it in that way. I just like you're allowed to still, be a little nostalgic for your past
Of course.
self. Yeah.
And hey, if you there was a point in time where you thought you were going to continue at university, and then just life got busy and other things came your way. Life comes at you fast. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be shocked if one day you decided to maybe go back to school, because I think you just really love that environment. I don't think it fits into your life right now.
It would require that I don't have as much to do. That's the only way it would be possible for me to go back to school. I could not even imagine doing that now because school takes a lot of time and dedication. And if you're in it, you want to gain something out of it. Not just the degree at the end of it, but you want to commit and learn whatever it is you're there to learn. And that takes a lot of mental energy. So it's really hard to have too many distractions. Although, like, the reality is most people have another distraction while they're in school. It's like impossible to not have anything. But I'm just saying, like, generally speaking, you want to make sure that you're well equipped and in the right space to attend school in order to get the most out of it for you.
But like, I remember having classes where you'd see more mature students, and sometimes like I knew sometimes it was clear they were doing that because they were trying to make like a change in the trajectory of their career or something like that. But I knew more than a couple people, older people, who would go back to school, I want to say not out of a necessity, but out of like they're at a comfortable place later in their life and they just like learning.
I remember there was a librarian in one of our grad classes. I don't know if you were in that class or not, but there was a librarian who like worked at the school library. I'm pretty sure.
And she was also just doing the classes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she went back to get her master's degree, which is so cool.
Don't you need a master's to be a librarian? Like a master's of library?
or she could have been doing her PhD.
Yeah.
It was a grad class, so she could have already had a master's. You're right. Yeah.
What's interesting, there was also a police officer in our grad program. And I had some crazy conversations with that guy. And he really brought a lot of practicalities to the conversations we were having about criminology.
I really appreciate that too, about grad programs where you get more people who have different life experience. And sometimes it's way more valuable to a program because in all these classes and grad studies, like you often have to talk to each other to talk about theory and application, talk about your thesis, how you're going to apply what research you're going to do. And to have people with those kinds of different life experiences brings so much value to that subject matter. So we were in like criminology/sociology, and there was someone who'd been an on-duty police officer for like 30 years or something. They bring an incredible amount of knowledge and perspective to that. So we can have more functional and like productive conversations that don't just take into account the 22-year-old who like thinks they're a sociologist because they read a textbook. So I think it's important.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's important to have these conversations, not just from the perspective of people who have only ever been students. I think that's a risk that I think you do see that play out in some programs or some courses sometimes, and it's kind of a disservice to learning.
Anyone can be a student.
Yes, maybe one day we'll go.
I don't know.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch on? I think we can keep this. We've been talking like 40 minutes now.
Yeah,
so.
I just, I don't know. I guess I never really got the opportunity to talk about the scholarship. I posted that video and then was kind of offline. I had a really good time filming it with Simplyproflogical. And I know that in the comments section, there was a lot of people who were inspired, entertained too, I hope. You guys found it entertaining. But, you know, to see a woman who has been so incredibly successful in her own life, a professor of psychology and law. Like I think for me as a young woman, it was incredibly inspiring to look up to other people similar to me. And she inspired me 8 years ago or however many years ago. So I'm hoping to kind of pass that on. Who people have inspired me on to you guys. And if you haven't watched that video, you can watch that on my main channel. It was a main channel video.
Yes. And if you go to Carleton and you're in any program in sociology or crim or anything, you know who that professor is, and we would recommend taking her classes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was great. I like the top comment was like, Professor Emma Stone. Did you see that? Because
she totally looks like Emma Stone.
She does look like Emma Stone.
Yeah. And now everyone thinks every prof in Canada is just like amazing because of her. I told her that. I'm like, you're gonna have other profs like worrying because they're just not as funny or
she
as
set a very high bar.
Very high bar. But yeah, I've had other profs too that were great too. But just this one in particular, I was her undergrad student in more than one class. I TA'd for her as her teacher's assistant for like first year crim classes. I think I did that 2 or 3 times potentially for 2 or 3 semesters. And then she attended my defense. She was an evaluator on my defense.
So yeah, even though she wasn't your thesis supervisor, because your thesis wasn't sort of a topic that made sense for her to be that, she was the external
reviewer of it. So yeah, she was kind of part of my journey. Through a lot of it. Yeah. So just big shout out to Simply.
Thank you to her. Thank you to everyone at Carleton that helped us set up the scholarship. It was actually, once we knew what we were doing, it was actually a pretty easy process.
Yeah. Well, I hope so, because these big formal institution things, they have a lot of things, like, and a lot of people who work on this stuff to make this work, make it fair. So yeah, we're really happy to be a part of it, and I'm just like feeling like, you know, I was helped a lot when I went to school. My grandmother helped me. I had a lot of scholarships that helped me. I was a TA that helped me during my master's in terms of like just having money.
Yeah.
So I recognize that I've been helped a lot in order to get the education that I have. So this is me wanting to help other people, and I'm finally gonna do that. And I don't know why it's making me upset. It's supposed to be a good thing. I also wanted to mention, I don't think I've ever mentioned this before, because I didn't even really know until like a few years ago, but my great grandfather he's dead now because he's that old. My great grandfather, he has a scholarship at the University of Toronto, and he started it, I don't know, like 30, 40, 50 years ago.
You didn't really know about this until recently.
Yeah, like I might have heard of it, but it's just not something I remembered because it like didn't apply to me because I wasn't going there. And he was a pharmacist.
So it's a pharmacy
So I
program
think
at U of T?
it's specifically, I don't know if it's specifically for the pharmacy program or just science. I can't remember. But yeah, my great grandfather, it's a different last name because my grandmother married to get the name Rotenberg. So it's not Rotenberg.
So her father had a different,
it's a different last name. But yeah, my great grandfather still has a scholarship that pays students every year to be in, whether it's pharmacy or science, at University of Toronto. So yeah, finding that out and realizing that, and then looking it up more recently, like you can still go to the website and see that. It's like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's great. All right, apologies to Professor Emma Stone. Maybe we could convince her to come on up. I know she was very nervous to even appear in that video.
I feel
with
bad
you.
asking people for like content, you know, even as much as I hope that these are like good things to put out and they are incredibly valuable for our audiences. You know, it's within people's comfort zone. So we'll see if she wants, but no pressure.
Maybe.
The video was already amazing. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll probably see you next Taco Tuesday.
Yeah. We're going to have tacos?
Whatever you want. We can have whatever you want.
Okay. Thank you, guys. And how could I forget to say thank you to literally everyone watching this, everyone who's watched all of my videos, who's watched ads. Every time you watch an ad on any of my channels, I get like a fraction of a cent, whatever the calculation is. And all of that has contributed to my ability to be able to fund this scholarship and do this in the first place, to be able to do this informally for the past few years, but more importantly, to do this. Like, I would not be having a scholarship. I would not be paying a university $100,000 if it weren't for having this online success that I 100% thank everyone who's contributed to it, whether you purchased a merch or holo taco or something from my affiliate link, or you just watch videos and ads. All of that has added to our ability to do this. So
yeah,
thank you.
All right. Very mushy.
Now
Thank
we'll
you,
go.
everyone. Now we'll go. We'll see you next Taco Tuesday. We can eat some tacos.
See y'all later. Bye.
Bye.